I was blessed enough to have that, and then he took me all over the Midwest basically, and I fished with him everywhere, learned all kinds of different lakes and techniques, and then I mean, he was no professional fisherman, but he had a love for it too. So he actually propelled me into getting into like certain clubs, and then I went to like camps with guys that were professionals that I used to watch on TV. So I made a huge journey around the Midwest fishing with my own man, which at the time it was never one of those things where I was like training to be a guide in training or anything like that, or a professional fisherman. It was just something that excuse me, that I had a love for and a passion for, and I got to learn from a lot of really good guys that are, even to this day, Hall of Fame kind of people in the fishing industry. And, I can say that I fished with those guys, and I still do. There's like a guy in fishing industry, Spencer Petros, who only lives about 10 minutes from my house, and, he's now 80 years old, and, but he's like my uncle now, like literally, like, whenever I have a question about the business or fishing or anything, I call him, and he kind of dials me in on things. And he kind of took the place of the old man a little bit, man, because he's very, very much like him, where he has no filter.
I
He's
love
like
it.
an old school Chicago Greek, and anything that goes through the brain box comes out the mouth, and there's no filter in between. And I like that because that's how my old man was. When I screw something up, he's first one to tell me, and when I do something well, he's the first one to tell me. So, I've just had the opportunity to meet a lot of really good people and do a lot of cool things. So it really prepped me for getting into something like this. Just like kids who start playing baseball at 3 years old, and then you hear these success stories about how they became professional athletes, and it had nothing to do with them, training to become a professional athlete at 3 years old. It's just the passion you take on
Mm.
doing this, and luckily I got to turn this into something that I love as a job, and help a lot of young kids and even older gentlemen propel their fishing to another level.
Wow. And you said something very key. Not only in childhood did you have a mentor and someone that guided you, no pun intended, right? But then now you have someone that has taken over as more of an uncle version, and you find these people in business and in life that if you're open to it and you stay coachable, you've been able to gain a lot of knowledge from them. So thanks for sharing that part. What so you're fishing during your early days of life, and you're learning all this stuff. Take us through that kind of that switch of where you go, wait a second, I've actually got a business here and I can make money doing this. What was that transition, and how did you set it up? What was the kind of the tools of the puzzle that you put together to actually start in business with T-Bone?
It's a good question. Honestly, man, it was kind of one of those things that it wasn't a huge plan. I'd love to sit here and tell you that I had this giant plan, formulated in my head. And the truth is, it became a little bit more out of desperation. I mean, I've
Mm,
been an electrician for, at that time, 12 years, and I was a union electrician. And the economy in the late 2000, 2008, 9 got really tough, and the
mm,
money wasn't there like it had been, the 8, 9, 10 years prior, where I was making, pretty good money and being able to have a little bit of spending money, and it got tough. So I had to formulate something. I had to come up with something where I knew I could pay the bills now. And I'm like, all right, I know how to do a couple things here. I know how to do electrical. I know how to play baseball. I know how to fish. Obviously, I know how to sing. Which one of these can I? What can I do right now? Make some money. And it really started out at I was just working a little side gig at a bait store locally, and guys were coming in and they were like, "Oh, we didn't catch anything today," and I would just be like, "Well, I was out earlier, and I caught this," and then it came to the point where guys were like, "Yeah, I'll pay you a couple $100 if you want to take me out because I don't ever catch nothing." And I'm like, "Yeah, dude, we could do that." At that time, a couple $100 was groceries, so I was like,
sure.
"Yeah, we could do that." And it got to the point, excuse me, where the word of mouth, these guys were telling their friends, and I was like, man, now I'm working 3 days a week, making, a couple $100 a day cash. Bet you if I really put my mind to this and, get licensed and do all the right things here, I could probably do okay. And what it comes down to, like, any other businessman, you're a little bit married to it. You have to be able to put in the time, and you want to have, you want to be the best. It's your business, it's your baby, right? So, I knew that once I got in and I was like, all right, I'm going to get my license. I'm going to do all the things that I need to do. That I don't want to just be a guide. I don't want to be just a dude who's making a couple extra bucks, $100 here and there. Now I want to be the best guy. Right?
Mm.
I want to be the best guy I could be, and hopefully at some point, one of those guys that goes down in 50 years. Man, remember that guy, Chris? Man, that dude was a great guy. And so that was kind of the way I approached it. I didn't just go in, half-assed with it. So I went in, I bought a new boat, bought a new truck, got the whole thing kind of going, and
Mm.
it was all that money I had, left over from like the union. So I pretty much dumped everything into one jar. I'm like, all right, this better work because if not, I'm gonna be living in my garage or someone else's garage soon. So I had to make it work. I had at that time I was not married yet, but I was engaged and I needed to make some things happen. So I mean, I just kind of started doing my thing and doing a little bit of promotional work, but a lot of it initially came word of mouth. And I was probably working 3, 4 days a week, and it kept me held over. And then from there, I started to understand the business because Spence was like, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this, and I started to follow those. And you had brought up a really good point earlier about mentors and being coachable. That's in any aspect of your life. If you become uncoachable and if you think that you just know too much, you're going to be stuck, man, because there's always people that can help you and have done more and better than you have at whatever you've done, you know, and that's it, whether it's a business, it's sports, it's being a dad, I mean, you got to listen and take the advice from people who've done it. That's who I've become. Like, I've realized that in my life that, you got to listen to people that know how to talk about instead of being too proud, and just doing your thing. So I really listened to what he had to say, and he gave me a road to success. And I mean, by no means am I a millionaire by doing this, but it has provided for my family. It's made a good living for me. And um, there's a lot to it. Obviously, I've been going 10 years strong and going on my 11th year of it. So it's definitely become something where I have a little bit more money in the pocket.
That's awesome.
It ended up being a good thing.
No, hey, and you're setting up that journey, right? I hope people are listening and replaying that, right? You were coachable. You actually took your ego out of it, right? And because you had some I guess life experience that you could transition and say, hey, I'm good at this, and then you had the attitude of an all-in business owner, which is huge. Take me back a little bit. So walk me through. You had some savings. You didn't do a loan, is what I'm assuming, just so we kind of clear that part is no loans to start this business. You took some savings. You
Yeah.
dumped it into a boat. Because I know nowadays I see with some sponsorship and some things that you have available to you. But so you have that. Did you already choose a location? How did you start to set up like, okay, my time frame? From the people that are asking to come on board, did you set them up 2 or 3 at a day? Like, walk us through some of that operational side of things.
Right. Yeah, I didn't have, I didn't take a loan. I had like annuities and savings and stuff from the union, and I took that money and put it into the business.
Hmm.
As far as being able to get on a schedule, I mean, just from the years of knowledge, it's like if you play a sport for 25 years, you have all that knowledge built up in your head, right? I mean, when the fish are biting, typically, I mean, that's the only thing about fishing is, it's nature. You can never. There's a lot of uncontrollables.
Yeah.
You get weather, you get all kinds of stuff that's out of your control. But you go with the percentages. And I know that on whatever it might be a midsummer day that if I started 5 o'clock, it's better than if I started 7 o'clock. Just all these things that I've learned over the years, and now after doing it for 10 years, I mean, I have it to the point where like when you're out in the outdoors doing this enough or doing anything enough, I mean, if you're a garbage man, you know exactly how to do something after 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, So it just becomes old hat, But in saying that, I constantly learn. I mean, as much as I know, I learn every day of some new stuff, and that's the beauty of it. Like I keep my mind open to the learning of the whole game. And it's not just being a great fisherman is a huge part of this, right? It's just like being a musician, right? I mean, you gotta play good music, you gotta write, you gotta be able to play your instrument well. But there's also a business to it, and that's the difference between a lot of the guides out there, and a lot of musicians out there, and that kind of thing. It's there's a lot of great musicians out there, but there's a lot of broke musicians out there.
Yeah.
That's just the truth. I'm a musician as well, so I know how this goes. There's a lot of guides out there. There's a lot of guys that are living in a 800 square foot house and eating bologna sandwiches at night because they're not handling a business. They're just making it as a fishing, and they're not dealing with it from a business aspect. And luckily, through Spence and just through life lessons, I've learned how to run a business decently well, and I'm still learning. But I've added on 3 guys, and I'm probably going to add another 1 or 2 on this tier. So I have, 3 to 5 guys working under me. So I also get a profit from those guys that are working under me, but they still make their money and they're still doing fine. And they have families and they have the whole thing. So we're, I call them my partners because really at the end of the day, yeah, I own the business. Excuse me, I own the business, but without them, it doesn't run as solid as it does just me. I can only do so much. I built the business enough to where I needed to bring on a partner back about 6 years ago because I had too much business, and I was greedy, man. I didn't want anyone else getting business, right? I mean, and here's the thing: like I'm friends with other fishing guys in the area. I like the guys; they're great dudes. But business is business, right? Like you can call it however you want. Like you could be, best friends with the hot dog stand down the block, but you own a hot dog stand and you want all that business coming to your business. So instead of being like, hey, I'm booked, sorry, can't handle it, I'm like, no, I can handle it. I got another guy. Don't worry about it. And then he became overbooked, and I booked another guy, and now it's really slimmed down on, in this area, I'm pretty much the only guy that's doing it full time at this kind of
Level.
rate. And that was just because I don't, it's definitely not greed because it's business. It's, if you're going to be a successful businessman, you got to have some kind of plan. It was more of like, hey, I know these guys want to come out with me. I need to make that available for them, right? So therefore, I have to, train these guys or some of these. I mean, these guys who came on were no slouches by any means. I mean, they were fantastic fishermen and they learned how to be great guides and do a business. We were all learning together. So we've taken it now to the next level where we are the premier guide service in Northern Illinois and Southern Wisconsin. Come to Northern Illinois, this is who you're fishing with. We get guys from all over the country all the time, and like you said, we had Jimmy Chamberlain from the Smashing Pumpkins out the other day who, what an amazing dude, man. But it's cool to have people of that stature go, oh yeah, dude, I know who you are. Like, cool, awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's in that world, in the fishing world, we're excelling. It doesn't make us millionaires, but it's always nice to feel like you've succeeded in the path you've taken.
Well, you said quite a few nuggets there, and again, I'm a big proponent of taking notes on these, and that's what this podcast is about, right? Is teaching people how to go for CEO, right? And you become the CEO of T-Bone Guide Service. You shared a couple things. One of them is just understanding that your skill set created momentum, right? And once you get momentum, I talk about this in some of the videos I've been able to do, is that's the thing you want to keep, right? And you didn't cut yourself off like a lot of small business owners do. Because of perfectionism, because of wanting to keep everything just by yourself, you don't realize that you are kind of an employee mindset, and you become self-employed, and that's awesome. But you actually went to a business owner mindset, which Kiyosaki talks about. Robert Kiyosaki: employee, self-employed, business owner, investor. So it's interesting that you shared that you had too much business coming in. You started to notice that because none of us can work, 28 hours in a day. There's only 24 hours. Then you're engaged and, and all these other responsibilities as a son and soon to be husband and friend to people and all that stuff, it can be overwhelming. You saw that scaling side of things. Like if I could bring in another pro and again, like you've done before, let go of your ego and not be the guy that has to be there, but then also make a bit off of that, situation where they take on that guide, you make some money, the business makes money, and the gentleman that you're feeding that opportunity to makes money. What an incredible start, of action. And you also said something that 10 years, a lot of people don't realize, the stat out there is 10,000 hours, right? You take 10,000 hours in anything and you become a bit of a master at it. So awesome. I appreciate that. Tell us a little bit about kind of, you know, again, maybe a little bit of steps beforehand. The marketing was, yes, okay, word of mouth. What did you do? Were you into the internet? Did you set up a website? In these beginning stages, what are you doing to actually get to that volume where now you have to scale with other guide service?
Right. Um, well, luckily in the fishing world, just like I'm sure in a lot of worlds, when you get to the car world and there's websites for the car world or the music world or whatever it might be. I mean, there's websites for everything, and there's people that are attracted to it. Some of these websites have, a lot of, onlookers, a couple 100,000 or more, and just it could be in the general area of, Illinois and Wisconsin. So I started to kind of link up with some of these websites and start pushing my name out there, get a subscription, pay a couple extra bucks, and, then I could throw fishing reports up and a little bit of, you know, promo on myself and became friends with those people. So they started kind of pushing me. And then what happens is you get people from that website, and they come out fishing with you, have a good time, catch some fish, and they go back on them. Dude, I went out with this dude, he's a great dude, blah, blah. Then all of a sudden it just starts rolling. It's just crazy how, like, some of these websites really have like a cult following. Like, these guys are all like, you know, literally a keyboard away from each other, and it's like they post something, and then 100,000 people see it. Not if that
Wow.
100,000 people, even if 10 come out with you, then they say something, and they're it really starts to multiply quickly once you're getting on social media. Basically, same thing with Facebook and Instagram and all that kind of stuff. It's all marketing, man, and as long as people are having a good time and they start telling other people, and like, and that's the other thing, right? We live in the Chicagoland area. The pool of people is giant. I mean, it's one thing if you live in northern Wisconsin, you hear about all the great fishing, and that's fantastic. But they have a pool of people that's maybe a 16th of the size of ours, right? Those guys
Huge.
don't stay nearly as busy because I have, 30 million people, whatever it is, within Chicago and the surrounding suburbs that, and fishing is such a huge thing, I mean,
Mhm.
everybody and their brother, even if they're not huge into fishing. Everyone wants to do it at least a little bit. It's a nice day. I get the guys who are like, it's July, dude. I have nothing else going on. Let's go fishing. All right, I got an extra couple $100. Let's go. Let's hire this guy. We don't know what we're doing. We don't want a boat. Let's go with this guy. To the guy who owns, a $90,000 boat and goes fishing every weekend, who's like, this dude knows his stuff. I need to go learn from him. So I got
Yeah.
all in between of this huge pool of people, plus the websites, plus we have a lot of trade shows like there's some in Rosemont, there's some in Schaumburg, and there's huge conventions, and they get 50, 60, 70, 100,000 people through them. And you get to talk to those people, and they're like, oh, I followed you. And, I mean, there's guys, it's weird, dude, because there's times where I'm sitting there, and the guys are like, I followed you on the internet since '09. And you're like, holy crap, like,
Wow.
that's crazy. Like, they know more about my life than I can even remember, And I'm like, for real?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, dude, we've been following you. And I'm like, that's wild. I didn't know that there was even that,
Yeah.
and a much smaller scale, but I could see how like these guys who are musicians or whatever, rock stars, like people feel they know you because of some of the stuff that you've done and they followed you and they're like, yeah, remember this time, blah, blah. I'm like, wow, this dude really has kind of honed in on me. And they start talking and people around the booth hear it and they're like, oh, this dude must be a somebody. Let's hire him, So it
Yeah.
kind of multiplies like that. And at the end of the day, it's all perception, right? I mean,
Mhm.
I'm just a fisherman. I'm just a dude who goes out fishing and does the same thing that, that I've done for 30 years, just enjoyed the sport. And I think, we're going to have, I tell guys all the time, like, it's fishing, like we're going to have some really tough days fishing. We'll have a good time. I can guarantee the good time,
Yeah.
as far as catching fish, I can tell you we'll be on them and we'll be using the right stuff. But some days they're just not going to bite.
Mm-hmm.
So the worst case scenario is you come on my boat, we have a really good time, you learn a bunch of stuff, and then you go home.
Mm-hmm.
People are like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm in for that. Like, how do I, and it's not a super expensive thing. If you come with two guys, it's really not expensive. It's 275 for a half day, 375 for a full day. So I mean, guys are like, yeah, for a couple $100, I'll come out and have a good time. It's either that or go to the bar and spend $200 on, food and
Nothing.
beer.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, they're all in, and it's a very easy sell. It's a very sellable thing. And saying, sell, I learned early that it's almost like being a salesman, right? Like you're selling yourself. Not You are selling a product, but I'm not out there selling a product that's tangible,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like people come up to me and there's a lot of fishing guys who are fantastic fishermen, but this coffee cup has more personality than they do. They say 3 words for the whole day and just do their thing. And guys catch fish. When I'm out there, I'm 20 minutes in already busting their balls, and I have my clientele that I mean, there's going to be guys who like the fishing guy that doesn't say anything all day because that's how they are. They're
Mm-hmm.
introverted. But then I have the guys who are my clientele, and they enjoy the ball busting. They enjoy the stuff we do in the boat. We're laughing, and some guys have been with me for 10 years now. Where I can start talking about their wife and their kids. Whatever, we can ball bust all day long, and it's like we're friends. And that's just it's been an awesome road, and it's nice now too because all the guys that I fished for this long, those are my clients. Like the guys who are now coming in, a lot of times I just push those to my partners.
Mm-hmm.
I have my clientele, and I'm like, here, you guys take these guys. I know what I'm getting into every morning. Like I'm
Sure.
not like, oh, is this guy gonna be some whack job? It's like, whatever, just being weird. But
Yeah. Like me on the
I
boat
don't
when I
know
came
about
on.
that. What's that?
I said probably like me when I came on the boat, the total newbie
No,
fisherman.
dude. There's some weird people in this world.
Yeah, yeah.
And sometimes you get them in your boat, and it's not like you only have to sit with them for 10 minutes. You're stuck in a
A
boat
few hours.
20 feet away from each other for 8 hours, and you're like, man, I want to start this boat really fast and put this guy out of here. So like
Yeah.
I try and avoid that, which there's not many guys that are like that. I mean, really, at the end of the day, like everyone's out for a good time,
Yeah.
and guys who are in the outdoors are kind of all built from the same mold,
Yeah.
we're all a bit the same. So I've had one or two over 10 years where I've just shook my head and been like, oh, I can't wait till this day's over. But
Yeah.
besides that, dude, it's all fun.
I love it. I love it, man. You just shared so many nuggets in there too. Again, I like to flow in these conversations, and you shared the way that you marketed, and then getting into events within your industry, and like you said, perception is reality, right? I know I throughout the years, the last few years that we've connected a little bit more now, I've seen you speak on radio stations. I've seen you hear about being at Bass Pro or something like that, that really kind of builds your brand, right? So we're talking about, advertising, marketing, guys and gals, and we're talking about branding, which T-Bone Guide Service and Chris's brand is really kind of blown up over the last few years. And now you're talking about, when you solidified your clientele, which seems like they're super loyal, they come out very often. How did you transition your pricing model, right? To get a little more technical on the business side to teach people. I'm assuming at the beginning you're like, I don't know what to charge. Okay, you want to
Right.
give me a couple hundred? All right, but how did you eventually get to where were you trying to say to yourself, hey, as an electrician, I used to make X. So if I
Yeah.
made X there and now I know I own my own business, I can kind of you know, write off some things so I can maybe make a little bit more than X compared to a job. Walk us through a little bit of that.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could tell you. I mean, in the beginning, honestly, John, it was just a matter of me getting people in the boat. I knew that if I get them in the boat, that
Mm,
I could get them to catch fish and have fun. And it was kind of like, I didn't know how much to charge in the beginning, so I was charging way under what
mm,
I should have been. After that, I mean, it was literally, going around and kind of looking, becoming friends with other guides. Maybe some guys that were up north a little bit, just guys at some of the trade shows I talked to, figuring out what, my worth was comparatively and trying to look at other people's pricing. I mean, that's no secret. Sometimes you got to do that. You look at what other guys are charging and
Sure.
say, how good am I compared to this, or what do I think I'm worth, and what do I have to offer that this guy doesn't, or what does he have to offer? How do I weigh this out? And I mean, I'm right in the middle. Honestly, I'm not expensive and I'm not cheap. I feel I'm fair. I think if can I go higher? 100%, no doubt. I mean, it's simple economics. If you have an overabundance of, you know, business, raise your price a little bit. I mean, it's a pretty easy model. But at the same time, I didn't want to price myself out to the everyday working class guy.
Mm.
I didn't want to go $500 and go, hey, $500 for the day. And then there's some guys who, ooh, man, I'd love to do that, but that's just a little bit out of my price range. And you price it at something like 375, and you get two guys, and you can get two working class blue collar guys who are making 65, 70,000,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, yeah, dude, I could spend $200 on a weekend. I'm good with that. We might have to save a little bit, but we could do that. But we plan a little bit, and then I also get the guys who, come out and they are very well off, and they'll hire me 14 times a year.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of trying to make my money all in one shot, I try and spread it out a little bit instead of someone having to save up. I mean, I get blue collar guys that come out a half dozen times a year because they become friends with other guys. They're like, yeah, I like going out with you too. Yeah, let's go together and we'll split it. All right, so we both split $200 together, and he gets $400 at the end of the day. Like that's usually not out of a range for anybody that's a working class person. And then like I said, I get guys who hire me at a week at a time, or 2 weeks at a time, and they're much better. They're more well off with money. But yeah, I mean, I just looked through other people's pricing and kind of figured out where I wanted to be. And like I said, I mean, now that I've done a lot, I mean, I definitely have done more guiding than anybody in the area. I've done more. I've done a lot of TV. I've done a lot of radio. I've done a lot of speaking. I've done, I've like you said, it's all branding yourself. That was a huge part of, Spence too. He's like, you need to make yourself a brand. Like T-Bone has become a brand now.
Mm-hmm.
So if I am a little bit higher, let's say one guy's 325 and I'm 375, like yeah, we're going out with him. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And it's no ego to me. It's just I know that I can get that brand name out there. It's like well, these shoes are really nice, dude. They're pretty sweet looking. But Nike makes one just like it. Which one are you going to buy? The one that has the brand name to it, right? Like
Yeah.
Nike's the one you're going to buy. This one might be just as good, or it might, have some things that you're not sure of, but Nike. So people know who I am, and they're like, we're just going to go with this dude because we don't lose.
I love
I
it.
felt like my prices were fair.
No, I love it, and it's a great analogy, right? I remember when Under Armour first came out, I'm like, man, these are generic. What's the UA thing, right? And then I really got into Under Armour just because of the branding and stuff, and now obviously the Rock and all these things that go with. I still love Nike, but it's
Yeah,
interesting
Under
that
Armour's dope, man.
that part of it, right? I used to remember the commercials they do with the football players, like "Rah," or whatever like they are the
Yeah,
ones Under Armour, right? So it was really cool. So um, let's also take it a little bit further there. You kind of saw that mid to upper middle range. You're bringing in a working class client. You also have the higher end people. Do you also have other services that are personally to you? And then walk me through also the difference in pricing, if there is any, that you're also having the other guides come after you, because there is that economy of scales, right? Understanding what supply and demand is and learning business and getting yourself out there. But now when you scale, is there a little bit more that you're doing? Is it the same pricing for everybody? And then you've just worked out a business model where you can override some of that. Walk us through a little bit of that.
yeah, good question. Yeah, we all are the same price. I mean, our time and our skills are all par. If those guys weren't as good as me or whatever, I wouldn't even have worked. So for them to be any less than me wouldn't even be, you know. Then I feel like if I did say like, all right, well, I'm 375, but so and so's 325, we're like, well, we're not getting the best guy then, are we? We're
Mm,
all on, for what we do, we're all on par, like legit 100% across the board. Some
Wow.
guys have better attributes in different spaces, and like we all have the things that we might not be as good as the other. The other guy's better at this. You just get a different feel for people. A lot of the same personalities. We're all kind of the same when it comes to that. So yeah, the scale is the same. Yeah, I get a certain cut off of their top, but it's also not enough to really affect. I mean, basically, it's if they get a tip that day, I'm taking basically the tip off of it. And
Okay.
everyone's okay with that. If you add that up over a week or so, that's an extra couple $100 or more in my pocket that I didn't have, and then I'm making my money. So yeah, I mean, the scale is, not only that, but we do offer some things that a lot of other guys do not offer. We do offer we do fish cleaning and fish packing, which a lot of guide service. I don't know if there's any of them that do that actually.
Oh, wow.
We
Okay.
do all that. You know, um, we do a lot of stuff that we do seminars. A lot of guys, they won't do anything to really help people catch fish. They bring them out, catch fish for the day, and then they go home. There's a lot of guys that want to come out and learn how are you doing this. I'll
Exactly.
have them sit behind the fish locator, the Humminbird systems that we use, and teach them everything about our electronics. I'll teach them how to use through the electronics on the boat can end up being, $10,000 worth of electronics. And there's a lot of guys who buy these, and then they go, "Man, I really don't know how to use it." So I'm like, "All right, come on out, dude. I'll show you how to use it."
Mm.
So they're getting the education of not just catching a few fish that day and going home and still having a boat at home they don't know how to use. There's times where I have guys come out with their boats if they want, and I'm like, "Here, you drive. I'll show you how to work everything." And they go home and they're like, "Dude, I know how to use my boat now. I have no idea." I have this $3,000 piece of equipment. It's a computer in front of me. I had no idea. All I knew how to turn it on and kind of scroll through, and now I know how to do it all, and I know exactly what everything's about.
Yeah.
So we offer that kind of stuff where there's not many guide services that do that.
And that's built into your price, Chris? Or is
Yeah,
that an added service?
no, it's built in, man.
Wow. Okay.
Something that we do that people know when they come out, they're gonna get that kind of instruction. They're not just out there sitting around, you know, hopefully catching fish. They're gonna get an education if they want it. If they're those guys that just want to come out and enjoy the nice day and drink a beer, catch a few fish, they could be those guys too. I mean,
Sure.
if you want me to be your water taxi and take you to bar and fish in between, I'll do that too. I'm cool with that. But I
Yeah.
also am the guy who will teach you everything you need to know about a boat and electronics and everything through and through.
Wow. Now, do you guys have merchandise too? I thought I saw a little bit of merch to your business. What are some other things that will you do? Maybe some in these times, a possible Zoom that is a teaching class. Do you get paid for speaking? Like, what are some other things that T-Bone has services and you personally have been able to scale inside the business?
Yeah, we do offer some merch. We do t-shirts and hoodies. Um, we're probably gonna get a little bit more merch this year over the winter. We're not. They have those trade shows, which now with coronavirus is not going to happen this year. You can't
Hmm.
stuff 70,000 people inside of a place these days, so it's not going to happen. So we'll probably take the money that we spend there and throw it in some more merchandise. Um, we do a ton of speaking, man. I've done it all over the Midwest, which has been a lot of fun. I mean, I get flown out sometimes to Minnesota, Kentucky, wherever, do a couple seminars, and then I do them at convention centers. I do actually, I what's day the 8th? I don't know. I got another
Seventh.
one
Yeah.
coming up. What's that?
Seventh. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I have one coming up. I think Tuesday or Wednesday that I have to do.
Okay.
And yeah, we get paid for it. Sometimes honestly, John, we get paid more for speaking than we get paid for fishing, which is
Sure.
ridiculous. I mean, it's great.
No, that's
But
awesome.
the same thing, right? I mean, there's guys who, I know that are athletes or whatever, and they're like, oh yeah, I get paid X amount of dollars, and that's more than you get paid in a day. There'll be a club or convention will say, hey, come out, dude, I'll pay you $1,000 to come out here and speak for an hour, twice a day, and you're gonna feed me. Like it works out. Like you made that brand, and it's also like a band, right? You got to draw. People are going to come in. They're going to pay the ticket prices. It's just like being in a band. It translates very well. Where like if I draw 1,000 people into a bar, and they all have to pay $10 to come see me, bar's made 10,000. They're going to give me $1,000 or $2,000 to do it. It's the same kind of thought. I could draw people in. you're making money off of them, their drinks or this and that, and here I am, and you're paying me an X amount. So yeah, we do a lot of public speaking, which is especially in the wintertime, it helps out a lot because wintertime can be so hit or miss when it comes to weather and fishing in the Midwest here. So it
Do
helps
you,
as an extra little nut.
you being in the Midwest, excuse me, do you do ice fishing too, right?
Yeah, we do,
Okay.
which is a lot of fun, man. Honestly, for most people, they think like, man, I don't want to sit on the ice, and but we make it fun. We have permanent shacks, we have heated shacks.
Oh
You get
wow.
in there, and it's like sitting in a shed, and it's warm, and we get pizza and beer and all this other stuff. We bring
Oh,
it out for the guys. They're having a good time. A lot of times we get bachelor parties and birthdays and all kinds of stuff where guys are like, oh, dude, I had a blast. And
that sounds awesome. Yeah.
it is, man. It's a lot of fun. We do 5, 6 hours on the ice, and then by noon or whatever, they're going home and napping and going out at night or whatever.
That
So we do a lot of that. We try and make everything like an event. We try and make it fun, not just like here's a bucket, dude, go sit on the ice. Yeah. And there's ice guys that are like that. Here, enjoy, and they come back an hour later. How you doing? Well, they've been sitting somewhere warm. Like it's not
jeez.
how it rolls. Like we're out there doing our thing and entertaining and you know pinning guys against each other and like that guy's way better fisherman than you. We're always pinning guys against each other, just making it a good time. That's kind of our thing.
Friendship
So
and business, man. Dude, I'll tell you, I'm learning a ton. I'm really excited to get this episode out there because I mean, just the intricacies of taking a labor of love and turning it into a business and the way that you actually think about things. I don't know if you give yourself enough credit. The ability to entertain, educate, put someone in a situation where I didn't even know that there was heated tents that I would think to
yeah,
myself, well, if there's heated tents and there's a blower, isn't the ice melting?
yeah,
How do you not
yeah,
sink in that? How do you test the ice if it's thick enough to actually sit, 4 or 5 guys in one place?
yeah.
I'm sure there's mastery to all that stuff. So, wow, what a cool story and journey for a business owner that wants to start something like that. Tell me a little bit about kind of, and this is sometimes the boring part, but I'd like to get into it a little bit. Is the accounting, the operations side, meaning, you start making money in any business. Initially it's kind of a hobby that you're turning into a business. You actually went all in, so you kind of put all your eggs in one basket, as you said earlier. But how do you start to manage the money side of things, and especially when you start to have people that work for you? Do you have a good accountant that you've kind of had to vet out over the years? How
I
do you
do.
how do you set up your structure? Are you an LLC, an incorporation? Just give us a little bit of taste of that. I know a lot of people don't like to hear about that stuff, but this we want to teach people how to go for CEO. So share a little bit about
Right.
what you've done on that side.
No, I mean, yeah, I think having a good accountant is everything. Like I have a good accountant. Actually, I don't know if you remember Mark Calabria from back in Melrose Park days, but Mark is my accountant.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, I have to count on him because that's his area of expertise. I can fish and I can run a business, but when it comes to handling the money, I need someone like Mark to tell me, okay, dude, you need to do this, you need to do that. If I had to think about all that too, it'd just be overwhelming. So
sure.
having somebody like that is extremely important. Um, then obviously I have the wife where, I'm the guy that if I have $500 in my pocket, probably by the end of the day I'll have it spent somewhere. I come home and I just hand her the money and I'm like, here, give me whatever you can afford to give me and then we'll go from there.
Yeah,
So, you got to have other people sometimes step up and do some of that for you because I'm not amazing with money, you know, and I believe, especially for people like me to have a good accountant and somebody like that as a wife to, control some of the money is a huge thing, or else
yeah,
I'll make X amount and spend you know just as much as I made because you have that money burn a hole in your pocket.
sure, sure. Well, we all we
Yeah,
all grew up modest, right? I mean, you get $500 one day, you're like, yeah, rich, right? Or I remember,
right.
so tell me right now, did you automatically set up a separate bank account? Did you incorporate? How are you structurally set up in that way?
Yeah, so I had an LLC, and yeah, I did have a separate bank account, and
Okay,
that all that money from the business goes there, and also it's a cash business, so you also have to be careful about, shouldn't say this on air, but you also,
yeah,
having a cash business, you don't want to put every dime into the bank and
Yeah.
show the government exactly what you made, right? I mean, you want to, having a good accountant is very good in that aspect too. Like, you know, I mean, as far as if the government thinks I make 100,000, then I'm gonna have to owe the government,
X
you
amount.
know,
Yeah.
my X amount of that 100,000. If they think I make 30,000, now we can kind of talk a little bit more. And I'm like, all right, no problem, paying you that much
Yeah.
because I made X amount. So yeah, I mean, with the cash business, you have to kind of be a little bit savvy and have write-offs and have a good accountant and not put every dime into, I mean, if you got groceries or something, right? Instead of taking it and putting it right to the bank, take that, $200 and just go spend it at, the grocery store instead of putting it in the bank. I think that's a very important thing to remember, especially in cash business. I'm sure it's a little different. I mean, I know guys who own cash businesses that do extremely well, where they're in seven figures. And same thing, man. There's these guys sometimes have $15,000, $20,000 in cash on them.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they put that in the bank, I know guys. I mean, obviously there's different levels of business, but I know guys who went and just bought cars because they can't put that money in the bank. They're like, I mean, I know a guy who owns a restaurant who's like that. He literally every day has like $20,000.
Yeah.
I gotta go buy a car. Like, it must be rough. It must be rough.
Well,
I gotta go buy a car.
and I mean, that's part of business, right? So you have different types of accounting, cash accounting and accrual accounting, and then you have your cash part of your business. You have your, I'm assuming you guys accept credit cards offhand, or
We accept credit cards
okay,
and
and
checks,
yet
the whole 9 yards. But 95% of our business is probably cash.
it's okay, interesting. So and part of that too is I don't know if it's been something I'm in the business finance world and the personal and business finance side of things, and sometimes dealing with a small business owner that might be cash, right, intensive. You when you look at their tax returns, it doesn't justify buying a $400,000 home or getting another $150,000 boat, right? Or I don't know if they're that much, but
Yeah, right.
what I mean is justifying the debt service compared to what you're making. So, as you grow and as you scale, you've kind of figured out your formula, which is awesome, right? And it's working for you, and you have the right accountant, and you set up your entity with an LLC. The website, is that where you do your merchant stuff and your booking of your events, or is it all? Do you have a virtual assistant, or does Gina help you? How does that work side of things?
Yeah, Gina helps a lot. The website is a nice addition, but yeah, most people, like, if they want merch, they just call me, say, hey, dude, what I got to do to get a shirt or a hoodie or whatever. Or if they, call for a trip, hey, man, I'll bring them out with me. I'll have them in the back of the truck. Hey, man, I like that hoodie. Can I get one? Yeah, sure, no problem.
Yeah.
And that's just a good way to do it. I don't really do anything over the internet because I don't do it that amount of volume where it's and not to say that I don't want to, just at this point it would be so much more of a headache than what it's worth.
Okay.
You know, if I had to ship out 50 switch, hoodies a week, it would just drive me insane. And for the extra couple $100, it would just drive me,
Yeah.
I don't want to.
And then and there might be some automation to that, right? Just to think about, right? I know that
Yeah,
there's some services where either maybe I don't know if it's Shopify or some other things, but linking some services where if they get your merchants, it actually is fulfilled, they have fulfilled by Amazon type things, where you might think about that side of things where your merchant. Now, have you worked on your logo a couple times, or have you always had the same logo? Because I think I've
same
seen
logo.
okay throughout the process.
Yeah,
Okay, interesting.
yeah, I've had the same logo since day one, basically. And we put that on two different style hoodies now. I wouldn't mind doing something a little bit different here and there just because now it's been 10 years and but it's nice also to have that brand that make it a little bit
Sure.
different, maybe just, update something. Who knows? It's something that's going to be on the agenda to talk about this winter because we're not going to be spending the money on those trade shows, which could be a little bit expensive.
Uh, I love it. I love it. So awesome, brother. Well, hey, look, one of the things that we like to start, ending the podcast on is, go for CEO when you're starting to build a brand and a business. Is the C is client experience, the E is employee or contractor engagement. I don't know if your guys are necessarily employees or they're more contractors. And then O is operational excellence. So you've kind of you've given us a taste how you treat your clients. But what would you say if you say T-Bone Guide Service, someone's watching this and they're like, holy cow, man, like his customer experience is incredible. What's the differentiator, that you could share with us? And then we'll go to employee engagement or contractor engagement and then operational excellence.
I'm sorry, John. Just repeat the question.
No, no worries, no worries. So the first question is basically the C for CEO is customer or client experience. So you kind of touched on that a little bit in the podcast today, but going deeper, like what is the brand that you're giving out and what is the service, the difference, I guess the differentiator of what T-Bone Guide Service offers to the client experience?
Again, I think a lot of that is, the education, the education and the experience being that, we're not just coming out and saying, hey, let's go fishing and, here, if we don't catch fish, man, like, oh my God, like this is the end of the world or this, we didn't complete our task. Like you're coming out to have a good time, right? That's when you spent your money to do. Like initially, if you come out fishing and you catch a bunch of fish, but you didn't really have that great of a time, you're like, I don't
Mm,
know if my money went in the right position, right? But if you come out, have a really good time, and catch fish and learn, now you're like, it was worth every penny, right?
yeah.
That's where I think that we certainly separate ourselves from everybody else. That's huge. Is every business you have to separate yourself from the others, whether it's like music, man. Like if you sound just like Pearl Jam, yeah, you're good, but then you're just another knockoff, right?
Mm,
Like you have to be something different, and people want to spend that money on, that. They don't want to, if they're going to spend money on something that's like Pearl Jam, why not just go see Pearl Jam,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I mean that's the way I kind of look at it. Is we've created our own brand by being who we are. We all have our own personalities. Hold on a second, Jake, knock it off. My dog told me senile.
No, I love it. So you've kind of broken it down, right? Why T-Bone Guide Service is just unique in the marketplace. You're dominating the upper Midwest, Illinois area, Wisconsin. I mean, as you said it, you've got clientels that are super loyal. They're coming out 10, 15, 20 times a year. You've got merchandise, you got all that stuff. So get us into more now the employee engagement. I don't know if they're technically employees of yours or if they're 1099 to you. But how are you treating that, and why are they staying with T-Bone Guide Service and not just doing their own thing or even going to another service?
It's a good question, man. Um, I think like anything, when you're a happy employee, you're a good employee, right? And even though yes, they technically are, I guess, employees. Um, we're all friends, we're all partners, we all work together. Um, I mean, we go out together, we hang out, we drink beers together, we go watch sports together. So it's, they come over with their kids. We're all friends now. Um, it's not a, I don't act like I'm a boss. I'm not like, well, I said this, So like when somebody comes up with something, and I always present it this way. Like if they say, hey, what do you think about this? I'm like, well, let's bring in the rest of the crew and talk about it, and we'll go from there. Like I rarely make executive decisions. Once in a great while, I might be like, hey guys, this is what we're gonna do because this is the way I feel it should do.
Hmm.
Most of the time, it's like, hey guys, let's talk about this. What do you think? So when you give them a sense of ownership, right, and um, and the reason they don't go anywhere else besides that is the fact that if they wanted to try and go do it themselves, now they're competing against what they just built.
Hmm.
I mean, they have helped build up the name T-Bone Guide Service, and they know that if they, went off and said, hey, now this is, Andy's Guide Service, then we're like, oh, who are you compared to T-Bone?
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like, these
Yeah.
guys have a whole network, and that's the other thing with fishing, right? Like, you have a network of guys. Like, if there's four of us working together, we all know where the fish are at because we're all out there doing it. Now you're trying to do it on your own, and you're gonna somehow fall off a little bit.
Hmm.
So people know that we're all out there doing it daily. Some of the guys live on water, and so it'd be really hard. Not only that, but it takes a lot of the money and pressure off them, right? I mean, all they have to do is wait for me to go, hey man, you got a trip tomorrow at 9 o'clock, be there, blah blah. This is the guy's name. Okay, there's no brain work in it, dude. I don't make them promote. I don't make them do any of that. It's basically everything comes into me and then I send it out. It's like going into a shop as a construction worker, right? Instead of drumming up your own business, you wait till boss calls. You say, hey, be there at 6 a.m. You're going to be working on such and such building, and I'll see you later. Do you want all the other responsibilities, or do you want the 6 to 2 p.m. job?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you made it simple and engaging for them. And like you said, you brought some heart into it where they're connected to you, they're connected to your family. You built, incredible rapport and a family structure. So awesome. So let's end with operational excellence. Obviously you just said it. What are you doing as the owner, as the CEO, right? With Gina and helping out and your accountant, you're doing all this stuff. So give us a little bit of the differentiator for T-Bone Service and how you're making your operations excellent as well.
Um, yeah, you just said it. Basically having the right people surround you, right? I mean, having the right crew. You got to have that, man. You can't do everything yourself. And I think that's what, makes a lot of people who run a business kind of unhappy at times is, one of my good friends owns a business. He said it, he goes, the best part about owning your own business is you get to pick which 18 hours of the day you want to work, right? And that's it.
That's
So you have to make it not that
yeah.
sometimes, right? Like if and there's times where you're grinding, man. And I mean, it doesn't matter if you own your own business, if you work a lot, whatever it is,
Hmm.
you're going to work a ton and you're going to do it. But you got to have more time for your family. You got to have more time for your friends, and you got to split that up a little bit between accounts, between maybe a spouse or whatever it is. Kind of break up the workload a little bit so that you have time to live and not just work.